All right, everybody. This is Stephen Trevathan with another video. I am the Chief Marketing Officer here at Herman Wells, and today I want to talk about a really interesting topic, something that I have had several conversations with other law firm owners about, considering my background, and that is, whether it is worth it to hire a digital marketing agency. So this is something that I've wanted to talk about on a video for a while. I mean, I haven't really been doing these videos that long, but it's something I do definitely want to talk about. My issue being that I just don't want to. I want to try to approach this as unbiased, with an unbiased perspective, as unbiased as I can be. Considering my background. So just again, Chief Marketing Officer in-house here at this law firm now, and I used to work as a Senior Marketing Strategist at a digital marketing agency that had law firms as clients. Actually, when I was running my own agency, law firms were clients I had often. It's a good clientele, for an agency. It makes sense. So the question being, right, is it worth it? And I'm going to answer that in a way that feels like a real lawyer-like answer, and that is it depends. So the cliche thing that you can say is, or that I can say here is that there is no magic bullet, right? An agency can do amazing things for a law firm. It really can. But in my experience, there are some very specific circumstances, elements that need to be in play for that to happen. And that's what I'm going to talk about in this video, because I'm not one that wants to say in a blanket statement it's not worth it. However, I will say that in the majority of cases, and it could be just that people want to talk to me about it because they're frustrated, but in the majority of cases it's been something where that relationship hasn't worked out. It has not provided the results that the law firm owner was wanting or hoping. And it's a significant investment no matter what. I mean, again, unless you're in a practice area that there's very little competition and it's simple, straightforward. You already have a fleshed out identity potentially. There's so many factors, but really it comes down to a couple of key things here. And if you are a law firm that is trying to market itself and you are in a competitive vertical, you're in a geographic area with a lot of other law firms, a lot of other people, a lot of other good attorneys competing for your target client or clientele, then digital marketing is one of the investments that really need to be looking at seriously and approaching it very seriously. And so hiring an agency makes a lot of sense. However, where I've consistently seen law firms make mistakes when it comes to this is essentially thinking that once you hire the agency that they're just going to have everything solved for you. And honestly, part of that pitch, especially the sales pitch to you from an agency perspective, is that they will have it all solved for you. But the reality is very different. And especially nowadays, branding, so having a real understanding of what makes your law firm unique, what makes you unique, and truly not only understanding it but fleshing that out. What is it? What does it look like? What does it feel like? What is that identity? Oh, all right, gonna have to edit that out, but yeah, maybe I won't. I don't know. There was just I think an actual mosquito flying around here in the office, and I think I got him. But he definitely tagged me a couple times before I started this video. But either way, branding and truly understanding what that means, that's another video I should do. But the way I've simplified how I think about branding, it's almost like what is the identity, so I mean, maybe even simplifying it even a little bit further, but it's when you have a friend, of someone that you've known for a long time, those elements of who they are, their personality, what they look like, what they talk, how they talk, how they interact with people. There's something consistent, there's something fleshed out in your mind on who that person is, if that's someone that's a good friend of yours, or a loved one, something that you love. That's what that element that you love about them, who they are. That to me is branding. That to me is the one-to-one to really good branding, is an understanding of when your law firm talks about something online, what is that element. There's consistency in how they talk about things. There's consistency on what their point is about things. That the angle that they're taking on certain things, the look that they have, your sense of style, all these things. It's really important. That can't come. So an agency, depending on what type of agency, but for this video, we're really just talking about kind of you've hired an agency to do your digital marketing. And again, and let me make sure you see that I'm doing the quotes here, because it's such a wide, the digital marketing as a term covers so many things nowadays. They could be doing content marketing for you, email marketing for you, social media marketing, video, SEO, just writing articles, whatever it is. This video, we're really just talking specifically, just for the sake of this video, we're talking about you've hired an agency to do, to manage your website, post content, maybe do some social media, stuff like that. The idea being that what they're pitching to you is that they're going to get you the leads you want to grow your firm, right? So for me, the missing elements have been fairly consistent. This was what I was experiencing, not only when I was in an agency, and when I was frustrated. I mean, there's a reason I pivoted into this role, and when I came into this firm and was working full time with this firm and started in here as their chief marketing officer, that was, I'll be honest, my first and foremost goal was, how do we completely replace that agency? Because my idea was I wanted to build, and it's what I am working on, is building our own internal marketing agency. However, that's just something that I'm able to do because of all my experience. If you don't have someone in-house that has all that experience, it's going to be tough to do. Now, part of me wanting to do these videos is actually also to describe what I'm doing in order to achieve that. But I still think it's viable to talk about this, because I think that having an agency is still worth the investment, but you need to approach it with first having the right expectations. And again, you need to, my recommendation is that you keep this almost separate from what you've been pitched by the agency. A lot of agencies, depending on the size, it could be if it's a smaller agency, hell, even some of the bigger ones around here in Florida, that initial point person, the person that sold you on working with them, probably isn't going to be the one that is creating your strategy and managing the execution of what's going on, what you're paying for on a month-to-month basis. So keep that in mind. There is that element of what you've been sold and then what's actually happening. And something I see a lot of when I've talked to law firm owners that aren't happy with the agencies they're working with is just their expectations were unrealistic, or they weren't even really fleshed out. From the perspective of the agency that's working with you, if you don't have realistic expectations, or you don't really have set goals for them to aim at, it's really going to be hard for them to move the needle for you. I mean, it's that classic case of, what's not measured is really hard to improve upon. In my experience with law firms, when I was working on the agency side, that was an issue. Conversion tracking, all these things. There's all these potential problems that can be taking place on the back end or internally that would impact your ability as an agency to actually drive the results that you want to. So these are just things that can play a serious factor. And additionally, if you've hired an agency, and again, when I was pitching on potential clients, I think one of the things I did well was I tried to set those realistic expectations as best I could up front. We didn't make promises. When it comes to SEO, for instance, it's a classic case. Google can change up what they value at any given time. They make algorithm updates all the time, and significant ones on an annual basis, semi-annual basis. But in terms of what my approach had always been for content marketing, I kept a similar approach through the years and just kind of have improved on it. But either way, I would typically tell people, now while my past experiences have been favorable, I'm not making any promises to you because you never know what's going to happen. That's the thing. That's the great thing about digital marketing. There's exploration. There's almost a scientific approach that you're taking to it. So someone that promises you results, I'd be very wary about that. So right off the bat, again, the expectation thing is super important. Setting those expectations between you and having realistic ones. Again, if you're in a competitive marketplace, and for your practice area, you have a lot of competitors in the area, and you have a tight budget, I'm saying you're anywhere less than $10K a month, and say you're doing personal injury, and you're working with a digital marketing company. This is where I see people get upset. They're expecting immediate and bountiful results, and I actually, I'll talk to the owner and I start digging into, okay, so what they've provided to this agency based off of what they're looking for, and it just seems like a total mismatch. So having unclear, unrealistic expectations and a lack of clear communication, or a way for even the agency to communicate regularly with if their point of contact is the owner of the law firm, and you're getting really busy, all this other stuff you become your own bottleneck essentially. So these are things that happen often. They happen often in my experience, and these are things that really hamper an agency's ability to do the best work for you. And I also have something I'm trying to do here that I have done in other videos, actually have some sort of a semblance of an outline for this video, because I do tend to bounce around quite a bit. But another big thing, because I can even tell just talking about this, talking about expectations is a deep video. I think in general, I actually think that all these conditions that I wanted to highlight, and I'm simplifying this. This is just a top level video. I'm trying to keep this as simple as possible and trying not to go too far down any of these, but I think there are at least 1 to 2 or more videos that I could do on each of these conditions as I've seen them, and really talking about it, because it's amazing how often I've seen these be the reasons why the law firm owners have wasted a ton of money, and it really wasn't it wasn't the fault. Most often it's not the fault of the agency where things are going wrong. It's just not having a clear expectations, good communication. This next condition I really want to talk about is the brand identity and voice. So I mentioned this a little bit before, but this is huge. So if you are working with an agency, they can write content for you. They can post stuff for you. They can even shoot video for you. However, if you don't have your law firm's brand identity clearly cut out or clearly identified, it's going to be really hard for them to create anything for you that is going to stand out. That's going to be, in my view, successful in the way that it creates a lasting legacy. An agency can do all these. They can automate. They can give you recommendations. They can give you the strategy on how to go about doing things. But in the end, the thing that your target audience is going to be connecting with is what your brand identity is. Who are you? What makes your law firm unique? Why am I choosing your law firm over all these other, say, personal injury law firms, especially? And it's one that's easy for me to go to because that's one of our practice areas. And here in Florida, there's just a ton of competition. What makes your firm unique compared to others that I can go to? If everyone's giving me the free consultation offer, I need something more. So that's something that agencies are often not empowered to do on their own. They really shouldn't do on their own. That's the thing. That is something that I'm very firm on when I recommend that should be coming from you. You need to drive that message because otherwise it's just going to be muddled. Especially, think about it. You imagine having a strategist own that much of your brand identity and direction, and they might not even be at that agency for, in another year or so. They might be gone. It's just, this is your law firm. And again, I'm saying in this video because first and foremost, at least starting out with these videos, I'm talking to law firm owners with this content. But really, if you're another chief marketing officer at a law firm, approaching it with that ownership perspective, I think it's that important. So understanding what your brand identity is, having a real feeling of consistency on what our angle is on certain things, how we like to talk about things, what we're like in video. That's so important. And taking the time to flesh out a document. A good friend of mine who's a designer she's working actually with us right now on doing a full rebrand for our law firm, and we're redesigning our website. But actually going through and literally having someone like that create like a brand guidelines, and then having that be provided to the agency you're working with, huge. That could not only save you a ton of time in the long run, but also make the content they produce for you that much more effective and consistent. So amazing and well worth the investment of finding. Again, if you've got some sense of where you're going, hiring on a good graphic designer to help you flesh that aspect out, and then maybe working with a consultant to outline what your brand identity is and really putting pen to paper essentially on what that is and fleshing that out. It's well worth it. So another condition I want to talk about, actually really the last one for this video because we're already going longer than I wanted to, but it's having someone in-house, and that's, depending on your size, probably going to be you if you're the law firm owner, but maybe one of the other attorneys, or if you have someone like myself, any other staff member, but someone that has, again, that a real sense of involvement and stakes in these campaigns. So essentially you need to have someone that's going to be managing that agency that you're working with. This is a big area. So this is one that's really, in the conversations I've had with other law firm owners, this is the one that's come up a lot in terms of where I've seen things just kind of fall apart. Actually, and beyond just law firms. I'm talking of most businesses. This is where the issue really, this is the heart of the issue here, is not having someone, because most agencies, what they do is you're going to have your project manager at the agency, so if you're the law firm owner and you're the one that's their contact person, having that regular report in on, okay, how are things going, that type of stuff. So what I've also seen, that should be on the table. I don't really care how big or small the agency is. That should be on the table of, all right, well, I want to have a regular check-in, and I want to go over the numbers, go over what you're doing, and let's what's working, what's not, and again, approaching it with the right, going back to expectations, approaching it with the right mentality. Something that and I've seen, again, being on the agency side, I've seen it with a lot of different clients, a lot of different industries, but it just never helps. I can, from a psychological perspective, I can see why some people approach it this way, especially if you're, paying an agency quite a bit of money. But coming in with that mentality, that almost gotcha mentality, where you're looking for them to make a mistake that you can call out, that you can call them out about, it's just not a great way to approach things. It's not developing an adversarial relationship with your agency is top on my list of never do. I mean, you're already investing a significant amount of money with this company, and to approach it that way is just a terrible idea. An agency, digital marketing agencies, still sort of heavily survive on word of mouth too. If they're local based, they're word of mouth. I mean, they're not trying to screw you over. Okay, so there are bad agencies out there, but we're talking in general. Their agency. This is a company, has employees, and is doing its best to provide the best level of service. But here's the thing. So there's that. There's people that will come in with this almost gotcha kind of adversarial mindset, are just looking for a mistake to call out, which doesn't help. When you're having a touch base with your project manager or your account manager, it should be an open discussion in terms of, well, all right, you can kick things off. They can go through the report, tell you what's looking good, what's not, and if you're able to keep that conversation open, you can really start to develop a really good rapport with your account manager and have them really willing to work for you. You should be that person that they look forward to having conversations with, because they're going to want to work harder for you. They're going to want to go that extra mile to, if things aren't working, to recommend pivots here and there, because that's it. I mean, every single client for digital marketing, it's different. What worked for one won't work for the other. Things change. So it's challenging. So being an active participant and also coming in with some level of understanding too. So this is something I don't see really talked about much, but do yourself a favor and start to learn about some of these things. Learn some basics. If you're the one that is reviewing the reports that they're sending over, gaining at least a cursory understanding of the metrics that they're sending and what's good and what's not, they can teach you these things too. I mean, this is something that you can ask them, really go into detail with you about it, but having someone that's doing this actively and not just doing it over email too. Because even with really good agencies, the thing with an agency model is, their lead pipeline has to be set up so that it's essentially they're almost always under the gun in terms of the amount of work that they have coming in. They almost need to, as an owner of an agency, you almost need to be bringing in more work than you can handle at a given time, because you never know. Things can fluctuate. Some clients might leave, but you have to be, for playing long term, you almost have to really keep that pipeline going. So what happens is, a lot of the times you got just teams that have a lot on their plate. They're almost always overworked. So there's as a marketing strategist. So for me, at the bigger agency I was at, I was essentially the one that was, as a senior strategist, I was the one that was creating the strategies and managing the projects. So from a top down, managing the execution, but we had different teams that were doing the day-to-day stuff. But it's a juggling. It's a weird way to say it, but there's a bit of juggling that happens. So if you have a client that just really isn't active, if you get them on the phone, they're really not really paying attention. They're not in that moment, or they prefer not even to do regular check-ins like that. They just want you to send the reports. Well, what happens is, over time, you're just going to inevitably, the agency is going to give that client less and less attention. It's going to be kind of more of well, hey, that's if we can get away with the bare minimum. If we're constantly kind of trying to figure out that if one's okay with the bare minimum, that's going to be how it will often go. And I'm not trying to throw shade on the agencies or anything like that. It's just that is kind of that balancing act that, in my experience, that's how these things would work. And so it's just, if you are an active participant and you are viewing this as something that you're managing, almost as an employee that you're managing, but you're not being adversarial, this is key in terms of getting the best work over the long term with an agency. Even if you're not active that first couple months, I'm sure that good ones will be really on it, making sure they're going above and beyond. But that stuff falls off, especially if you're just not giving feedback on things. They're just going to go, well, this seems to work, we're just going to keep going. It's just human nature. But if you have someone, if it's you, an attorney, or not a bad idea, but if you can have someone that has real experience in this area, like myself, in-house, to really own this aspect, that's really key. But doing yourself a favor and taking the time to learn about this stuff as well, and asking tough questions, and not waiting for months, or heck, you're at a networking lunch with someone like me, and we're getting into a conversation like this, and all of a sudden you're thinking, wow, wait, I don't get any of this stuff from my agency. They must be doing a terrible job. These things happen, and these conditions, as I've listed them out, I've kept them general, and really I want to go further into all of these, because this is just stuff that I see happening all the time. But I still say, to close out this video, I think an agency, a digital marketing agency, can provide a huge benefit to your law firm, because if you're in a competitive vertical and you're running your own law firm, I would be surprised if you're telling me you also have time to write content, post videos, do all these things. Again, there's just certain elements, especially these days, that having you or another attorney be an active part, you can't really get away from that. You really need that to stand out. But an agency is still a very viable option. Just, you need to keep these things in mind, because it is not a magic bullet solution. It's definitely not. And they're expensive, and really I only see the cost of hiring an agency for the same amount to only continue to go up. It's just that level of competition continues to go up. I mean, what they're having to do in order to produce the same level of results continues to grow. So it's a significant investment no matter what, at whatever level. If you're going the agency route, then I recommend making a significant investment in it, so you're actually giving them the ability to really execute on things. Now, a video that I would like to do after this is potentially looking at ways to have an agency, have a virtual assistant, have maybe a content writer, have these different groups that essentially are working together to produce results for you, but aren't under one package. Because one thing to keep in mind with an agency when it comes to paying them to do all sorts of just what comes down to it, like fairly menial tasks of like posting content, or uploading things to your website, posting, making sure your social posts go out. These things that are just become fairly mundane once you have everything set up. If you're having it go through them, that's something I would say is potentially a significant waste of money, only because your typical agency's got a pretty high level of overhead. If they have an office now these days, they may be reducing some of their internal costs by being remote, but if they have, if they have developers, designers. Honestly, it just seems like from the research I've done and when I was working in an agency, the cost per hour on average is higher with a good agency. And so some might provide a service where it's more cost effective if you're just having to post things. But that's where, man, I can already tell. Just even talking about this is a whole other video to go into the nuances here. But it's something to keep in mind. You can, and it'll be another video, which is going further into what I've been doing with the virtual assistant, having different content writer. I mean, again, a disclaimer here at the end of this video is that we currently aren't using an agency. I did replace that agency and built our own internal marketing agency, but it's taken a lot of work to get here. So, and we're constantly, we're facing our own challenges in different areas. But that being said, yes, still viable for sure. But you need to keep those conditions in mind. You got to have realistic expectations given your budget, your level of competition, and make sure that you really spend the time up front talking with them about that. There is the sales pitch process, but if you're saying, hey, I want to work with you guys, but I really want to have an understanding of what you're able to do on a month-to-month basis, and we're going to be keeping track of that. That's the other thing, being an active participation. If they're telling you that you're getting these many new content pieces a month, you got to make sure you're asking for links when they're posted, things like that. Keep track of that stuff, and then having a clear sense of what your identity, your brand identity is for your law firm. It's huge. Okay, I've gone way over what I wanted to for this video, but I think I've made some decent points. Looking forward to my next video. I hope everyone's having a great week.